Today's podcast is brought to you by Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. Accidents happen. Without the right coverage from the right insurance company, damage to your automobile can be a real financial hit. That's why Kentuckians appreciate the competitive rates and personal service they get from Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. When the unexpected happens, count on us to help you get back on the road. To request a free quote, find your local KFB insurance agent at mykfbagent.com. Kentucky Farm Bureau, big on commitment. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. We have got a fun one today.
Yes, I've known this guy for pretty much my entire Farm Bureau life, and it's kind of neat to see where he's gone through all those years, and I think people will like this conversation we had today. So,
if you haven't met Jonathan yet, you're going to learn a lot about him. We had some fun audience members. He brought one of his kids, and so he got critiqued as soon as we finished, which was fun too. But no, this one's going to be really good. So without further ado, I'm Renee Carrico.
And I'm Matt Hilton.
And this is Between the Rows. All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. It's afternoon. We have a great guest here today. Welcome to the KFB Studios podcast room.
Yeah, thank you all very much. I'm excited to be here with you. Always love being in the room with you two. You never know what's going to happen, though, with Matt.
He's loose cannon.
I am
as
a
creative
wild
as
card.
he is, that's one of my favorite things about Farm Bureau is how they allow for the creativity of their employees to really shine. And Matt's a great example of that, and love his work. And Renee, you're not maybe as creative. I don't know.
I would go ahead and agree with you there.
But from the professionalism, though, you've got that down pat.
Yes. I don't have any professionalism, but creative, I'm on top of that.
Well, it takes all kinds.
Well, again, thanks for being here. We appreciate you coming
absolutely.
in.
Well, cool. Let's get this thing started off. Matt, when you want to hand him the $20 for saying so many nice things about you, you can go ahead. And then, no.
Well, I got a special little thing between me and Matt because when I first got into politics, and my very first entry in, Matt was there because we were doing, or Farm Bureau at the time had the campaign management seminars that they put on. Mm-hmm. And Matt's job was to interview you and ask you the most ridiculous questions that he could think of to get you to say something stupid so that he could then go back and say, this is why you shouldn't do X, Y, and Z. This is how you should have answered that. This is how you should bridge from a question you don't want to answer to something that you want to talk about and all the things. And I came up here to Farm Bureau. It was like maybe my second time ever being in Louisville from Garrett County. I was like 22, 3 years old. And I walk in, Joe Kane was here at the time, and he was the one that was running that program. And I think the guy's name was Chris that used to do that and came in from American Farm Bureau maybe. And he was kind of the consultant that came in. And I get here, and I had long, shaggy hair. I'd had a hole in my T-shirt and just blue jeans on and boots and had mud on them. I brought my wife with me, Brooke, and, she looked nice, obviously. I did not. And the guy looks at me at the end of the first day, Renee, and he says, if you're serious about this and you are going to run for public office, you need to go find a haircut, you need to shave, and you need to put a collared shirt on before you come in tomorrow, or you're not allowed back.
What a start.
And so I leave my second time probably ever being in Louisville. We left here at like 10 o'clock that night. You try to find a place to get a haircut at 10 o'clock at night in Louisville, not happening. And so we finally found what we needed to do, and I ended up finding a razor and got a shave and all the stuff. So it was interesting, but Matt was there. Mm-hmm. The other thing was nothing's ever off record. That was the other main thing that he was pushing to us was nothing's ever off record because whenever we were talking, he didn't click the off button. And whenever we got done with the interview, and so he just kept asking you questions as if you were offline, just to show you the tricks that people can pull on you. So
Yep.
It helped me out. I'll never forget, and that was a great lesson for me. I'll never forget it. I owe Farm Bureau so much.
Wow, what a cool kickoff story. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That training.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I did it with Bob Schrader, the other Bluegrass and Backroads producer, and he loved he loved, especially the campaign management seminar was going after people a little bit. So did
you all do that same training with directors and stuff too?
Yeah,
so that
we did media training with lead program. We've done it. We actually have one with FFA and 4-H coming up. So we
their state officer teams.
Yeah, they come in. We talk and kind of just talk through interviews and how how to do it. And
it's one of the most valuable things I ever had. I'm not kidding. I mean, and there was so much value in that training that we took, but just the media training that they did alone, I still use tools that they taught me that day 15 years ago, Matt. Mm-hmm. And I still use them every day today, especially at the bridge conversation, because people are going to ask you questions that you really don't want or know maybe the answer to, and you've got stuff that you're wanting to talk about. And bridging that conversation from something you don't want to talk about to bringing your point home, and they help give me tools in my bag to be able to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's one thing it's always been neat about Farm Bureau is it's an organization to bring people to be better advocates, and part of that is being able to speak and
know when not to speak.
And when not to speak. Also talking points, how to stick to your guns.
That's right.
I think the best thing that I like about media training is one of my missions with that is to teach people to say yes.
Yeah.
Especially those FFA and 4-H kids. We have them come in and I'm like, you have been picked. Like you're like a juried kid to speak in behalf of people and say yes.
All right.
Figure it out after that. Say yes, figure it out. You're the right person. I say that to our lead program. You got picked to do this into this program. It's hard to get into. Yep. You probably are the kind of person we'd like to have them say yes.
Absolutely.
The people that should go out in there and say yes to things. When I worked in news, I always use the story in those scenarios about, people are always like, why'd you always interview the kind of the idiot? Like, why'd you interview those interesting people? And I'm like, because they said yes.
Yeah.
The people we should interview a lot of times
say no.
They say no.
Yeah. And
so it's actually a reason to say yes. It's like if you want that to be eliminated, we need some good people to speak. And so our media training is great for that. It tries to teach that, like, it's okay to say yes. Yeah. Just prepare yourself. You can ask a lot of questions, get yourself set, get yourself ready, and then you're probably going to pull it off pretty well. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, so I've always enjoyed doing it. And every time I get asked, I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Yep. It's a lot of fun. We've depending on the group, I don't ask interesting questions to the 4-H FFA kids, but depending on the group, to teach them kind of that moment where, like, if I can put them in that scenario in that setting, they'll be ready, in a different setting. And sometimes those folks have never been interviewed, depending on the different role they're doing. So it's certain cool. Well, I appreciate I'm getting all kinds of love here at the beginning of this one.
What an episode for you.
It was good.
Are we done? We're going to end it right now.
Got it there. Well, Jonathan, let's back up. Before the shaggy-haired, bearded, hole in the T-shirt campaign management, you grew up on a farm. You said Garrett County. Tell us a little bit about that background.
We're a 5-generation farm in Garrett County, which we farmed generations previous to that in other counties as our heritage came through the Cumberland Gap. But we've been in Garrett County for 5 generations farming, and we're predominantly a beef cattle operation. In years past, we've been out for about 7 years, but we used to raise about 200 acres of tobacco. And then we've got a greenhouse operation where we're 2 acres under roof and greenhouse, so we do hanging baskets, bedding plants, all those pretty things that you like in front of your house. We sell them. And then we also wholesale, not only just retail on the farm, but we wholesale to a large variety of market in central Kentucky and Louisville. Actually, the Sunshine Grow Shop out here in front of the Farm Bureau headquarters, my dad was there today delivering a load of flowers. And so we sell to garden centers all across Kentucky. And then we also, a couple of years ago, got in the pumpkin business, which is my favorite business I've ever been involved in my life. Love the pumpkin business. Matt, I figured out that women like pumpkins like they like their men. The uglier, the better. And
I'm an example of that.
Me too. I am too. But every time, it always tickles me. Every time my wife goes and picks one out, she always gets the ugliest pumpkins. She loves those ugly, warty,
and
nasty,
striped, and
which that's what she got in a husband too. So I can't blame her. But pumpkins are one of my favorite businesses that we've been in. But we've done everything on the farm. We're just a diversified farm in central Kentucky, as most of them are. We've raised 100 acres of vegetables in the past. Did strawberries, peppers, tomatoes. And then we also now currently raise silage corn and hay for our cattle to be able to feed them. We're background operations, so we'll run several hundred head of background heifers a year.
Very cool. Okay. Okay, so with the greenhouse business, I'm asking more ag question. You guys had tough end on some of the weather and things like that. How's that kind of been affected you, and have y'all kind of persevered? Well, I guess that's the importance of the diversification. You had other pieces you were able to lean on. Yeah, I mean, in Kentucky agriculture, that's the beautiful part of what we do. When you get out to some of the Midwest states, it's corn on corn on corn or beans on beans on beans. And, there's not much diversification. So if you have a drought, if you have too much weather, if you got a market crash, your operation gets affected more so than what some of our farms, especially here in central Kentucky, where we're as diversified as we are. We've had years where 5 of our 200 by 40-foot greenhouses got leveled by straight line winds. We've had years where, we've had hail damage on tobacco crops. So weather is part of it. That's one of the things about agriculture is that we're at the whim of everything. And we just have to make the best of what we can and try to get as many what ifs out of it as you possibly can, which is part of where insurance and all the other stuff where that kind of intersects and connects with you all. So,
So what you're in your position today. You've been a part of the legislature. Why still farm? Why is that still something that's a part of your? I mean, you could have walked away from that. You don't. I don't want to say you don't have to do it, but what is it about it that makes you continue to do it today?
Why do you breathe?
Right.
I mean, it's just a part of who I am. It's a part of what we do. And, I can't imagine a scenario in my life where I didn't farm and didn't have some understanding of what was going on the farm and being a part of it. It's hard to describe to someone who's not done it to know what it feels like to have your hands in the dirt, to be able to plant that seed and watch it come up and grow and be able to harvest it. It's unbelievable to be able to see a calf, that maybe nursing gets sick. You've got to bring it back to health. You've got to bottle feed it, and that connection that you get with the animal and just with the earth itself. It's just there's something more intimate about it than any other profession that I can think of. Even in the medical field, I don't think that our doctors, our nurses get as intimate with their patients as what we will with our livestock and with our crops and with our land in general. That's the beautiful thing about farming. That's also probably the hardest thing that we have to overcome, because we're all working. We're trying to do it. And the advocacy and the education part of this is so important because, we've got people out there in the world today and in America that want you to believe that we're poisoning the ground, eroding the soil, beating our animals. And those things are the furthest thing from the truth. Warren Beeler, my deputy ag commissioner, always says that next year is more important than this year. And so we're always trying to put back into the farm, back into the soil to make a difference for next year rather than trying to just take and take and take. And, our livestock is our livelihood. And so we love them just like their family. Eddie Melton, your all's president, my good friend, asked my son at the president's conference, he said, Reagan, did you feed the cows this morning? He looked at him and said, well, they don't live with us. And, that was where his head went. He knows them and is with them so much that it was like, well, they don't actually live with us, Eddie. We love them. And so it was a sweet moment that Eddie and I got to share and laugh about. But that's the intimacy that you get whenever you're talking about growing up on a farm and living on a farm.
Right.
So when you talk growing up on the farm, how cool of an experience is it for you to have your kids there too now? I mean, we're blessed. We get to see your kids. You get to have them travel with you quite a bit. But they get to grow up on the same farm how many generations now? I mean, so when you talk about building for the next year, you're also building for that next generation. I mean, how neat is that?
It is neat, but I'll tell you, and I'm sure a lot of your all's listeners are going to feel the guilt that I feel in this is that, I remember my granddad and my dad taking so much time and effort in taking me and doing things with me on the farm and teaching me. And it wasn't, my granddad, he didn't take me out there and say, this is what this lever does. This is what you're supposed to do here. This is how you're supposed to sit. This is how you're supposed to do it. He put me on a tractor and he said, go do it. And if I made a mistake, that was the thing about it. He was so patient. He never got mad. I could break something, and I broke a lot of stuff. I'll just tell you, I'm the guy that had to replace the doors on the Kubota tractor almost every year because I was doing something I probably shouldn't have. Leaving the door open because the air conditioner went out, all that. But I remember how patient and how much they poured into me to educate me on the things that were going on and how much I took to that to make it my own as well. And I feel so guilty at times because I don't do that as I remember it being done for me. I don't do that with my kids. And I think that in the life that we live today and how busy society has gotten with the 24-hour news cycle, with social media, with all the things that we're all involved in, I think that we, even in agriculture as farmers and parents, need to kind of take a reset and look back. I can't be the only one that feels that guilt from that, to be able to help better educate my own kids. My wife and I talk about it all the time. We talk about ag literacy in the classrooms and ag literacy, not just in ag education in high school, but in middle school and elementary. I just had a meeting today with the Lieutenant Governor and the Education Commissioner talking about just these things to try and help get more elementary education for agriculture. And we talk about it all the time, that if we don't even educate our own kids in agriculture, they're not going to know that corn doesn't come from a can, it comes from a farm, or that, what a cow actually looks like. Kristen, the new FFA advisor, used to be the teacher in Louisville at Seneca, and she said that at times they would bring in the elementary school kids and show them what a cow was, and they had never seen one before, didn't know what it was. They couldn't have told you that was a cow. And so I think we continually take it for granted that people just know, and even on the farm.
I think that's been a wake up, I think, in the last few years. I think people finally, we got pushed back into our own towns, whether you agreed or not, during that COVID phase. And a lot of people looked around and said, ooh, my rural town doesn't know. These kids don't know. And they drive by the combines, they drive by the planter. But if their parent doesn't know, or no one stops and takes that patient moment to say, oh, they're planting corn because there were beans there last year and we rotate. I mean, those conversations aren't happening in rural towns. And I think it really was a wake up call for a lot of people to say, ooh, maybe I do need to open my town up, even to rural Washington County Elementary School, who we think would probably know. Those kids would know what's going on, and truly they don't. So you think of that, and then you look at situations like Seneca where those kids haven't even seen a cow.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've got a huge gap. So I applaud your work on that, because it's not simple. There's a lot of people that have been working on this for years, and it's very hard to get into public school systems and get these kind of things in those elementary. If it's not core content, it's just tough to get it in.
Well, and the thing that we discussed today, and the thing that I want to keep at forefront in this conversation, is I don't want to just put another mandate on teachers in the classroom to have to teach ag. And so what we talked about was, how can we help build the resources through organizations like Farm Bureau, the organizations like the Kentucky extension offices throughout the state, and then partnering with our office and Ag in the Classroom and other places, because we've got the resources, we've got the materials, we know it, we've got the farmers and communities that can help do that. And so a couple of things that we talked about, just spitballing and brainstorming. This is not anything that's in fruition. There's going to be several more meetings to talk about it. But what would it look like to have an ag week in elementary schools across the state? To where that as you built up to that week and as you left that week, that you were talking about ag education for the curriculum that you were doing, and then it would end off with maybe going to a farm in that local community. Maybe you paid that farmer to be on their farm, like a admission ticket, or they got something while they were there and it helped build up their economy. Or maybe it was sponsored, lunches provided, buses. But I gave the example that my dad called me several months ago now during flower season, and he said, Jonathan, can you come by before you go down to Somerset for economic development meeting? And I said, yeah, I can do that. He said, there'll be a couple kids here and I want you to talk to. I was like, okay. I was thinking maybe a homeschool group, some kids from his church, something. There were 70 third graders standing on that farm whenever I showed up. 3 bus loads. The local Garrett County Farm Bureau sponsored them to be there, paid for the buses, paid for lunch. And I looked at Dad and I said, what are you going to do with them? He said, I don't know. What are you going to do with them? And I said, well, let's think about it. So we got a dirt tray and put out there. We got a bunch of tomatoes and Ziploc bags, and they made tomatoes up, put them in pots so they could take them home. I pulled a tractor out, let the kids get on the tractor and off the tractor. It wasn't started, nothing was with it. They got to take their pictures, and then we took them around and just told them silly things about the greenhouses. I told them they had to pay for the sniffs, and so as they were walking around, they'd sniff the flowers, and I'd say, that's $1, that's $1, just teasing them. And then talked about, we get fertilized from zoo feces. They dry it down, digest it, and it becomes a fertilizer. And so I called it zoo poo. And so they talked about zoo poo for weeks afterwards. But just as simple as that was, of them coming out on the farm, and as quick as we were able to do it, I heard about it for months afterwards from parents and from teachers of those kids being on the farm and getting that experience. It's something so simple that we can do to help educate the next generation.
Right. Absolutely.
When was it? You grew up on a farm. It probably was the path you thought. You're just going to be on the farm and those kind of things. But what was the itch that made you start wanting to serve in the capacity you're doing today? Was there something about I don't know, was it working with Farm Bureau? Was it what was it that you think really made you want to serve like this and just to be at the, like kind of the main agriculture advocate of the state with this role now?
Well, for me, my granddad was always involved in our community. He was on the fair board. He was on the fire department. He was on the Farm Bureau board. And so seeing that community leadership, that community experience really just kind of bled into me. I wanted to be just like my granddad growing up. The three main things that my granddad was he was a prankster, he was a farmer, and a ladies' man. And I'm two of the three. I can do the prank and I can do the farming, but I ain't the ladies' man. But he was my hero. He was my idol. When other kids wanted to be an astronaut or a baseball player, I wanted to be GB Shell. And, seeing how he interacted in the community, how respected he was, and how he led from where he was. A couple of years ago, we had Lead Where You Stand. And that's exactly what my grandfather was. He was leading where he was. He may have never been an elected official in any capacity, but he was a leader in our community that was respected and people listened to whenever the time came. And so I wanted to be that. I didn't know what that meant, but I wanted to be respected in my community, and I wanted to make a difference. I saw him make a difference, and that's what I wanted to do. And so I actually got in politics because, one, seeing advocacy through Farm Bureau, but two, I got a call from a guy, and he said, hey, I got this guy I want you to meet. He's running for ag commissioner. And I think you're going to like him, but you need to donate to him, put a bumper sticker on. He wants you to write a letter to the editor. So what's his name? He said, Jamie Comer. I said, I don't know who he is. I'd like to at least meet him first before I give him a check. And so I went over to Boyle County to a cattleman's meeting, and he was there speaking, and they were cooking. And I listened to him, and he was singing my song. Everything that he was saying is what I believed, and everything I believed was what he was saying. I wrote him a check, put a bumper sticker on, wrote a letter to the editor, and just kind of got hooked, because up until that point, I thought I was a throw all the bums out kind of guy. Every politician's terrible. They're all a bunch of bums. I don't care nothing about them. They're all crooked. That was my attitude. And I met Jamie, Congressman Comer now, and realized that, they're just regular people like everybody else. And some of them are terrible, but a lot of them are not. Yeah. And Jamie's just a regular guy. I tell people all the time about him is that whenever I'm with him, he's still texting with like his high school buddies, just silly things, that he knows. I mean, I've never seen anybody be able to keep up with the people in his life the way that Jamie does and still be on the national stage the way that he is. And that's really what kind of sparked me into thinking that just a regular guy like me can get involved and make a difference in politics.
Excellent. Very good.
And not to go too far on the political, we don't have to go too far into the national skill. That'll get us in a rabbit hole. But we talk about learning how to say yes. And I think a lot of people are starting to take that to heart, whether it's a leadership position in your local community, whether you want to be a magistrate, whether you want to be a judge, or whether you want to take that next step. Because if you do have an issue with all those people not believing or liking like you do, if you don't say yes and no one that believes like you says yes, then how are you going to kind of get that movement? So we feel that from our counties. I mean, we encourage our county members to at least do the campaign forums and do those meetings to get their points out there. But if you so choose, be on the school board. Join the city council, become a magistrate. So I think that kind of leads back to the say yes. If none of us, no one in your community says yes, then it's hard to complain, if you're still being asked. So
Right. So when we talk about Farm Bureau, what was your first glimpse into Farm Bureau all those years ago, and what did you jump into? What were you part of as a younger man?
Well, so when I was in high school, I actually got the scholarship, I think, from Farm Bureau locally.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I did. They're actually checking on it because I think they're wanting to do some stories about scholarship recipients. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I did. I remember getting it. But a pillar in our community, his name was Henry West, and many people that are going to listen to this podcast will remember Henry. He was on the tobacco co-op. And was, I think, president of that for a couple of years, and big tobacco farmer, big cattle farmer in Garrett County, and was on the local Farm Bureau for a long time. And he actually tragically passed away. And so the board called my granddad and said, hey, GB, will you get on Farm Bureau board again? Because he had been on previously and gotten off. And he said, I'm 78 years old. I don't really want to do it again. He said, but I got a grandson who would be perfect if you all want to talk to him. And so you all know this, and your listeners that are familiar with Farm Bureau will know this, but the moment that Farm Bureau gets a hold of you and you're young and you're energetic and you're ambitious and you want to try and make a difference, they will grab you by the hair of the head and they will push you as hard and fast as they possibly can into leadership positions. And and I took to it like a duck to water and loved it. And everything that Farm Bureau was doing was exactly what I loved about it. And being on that local board, I'd never been out of Garrett County before. And that was the first time I'd been to Louisville. It was the first time I did a lot of things, was being on that local Farm Bureau board. The experiences and the just the openness that I got to the world from Farm Bureau, being on that board I think I was 17 or maybe 18 when I got on the board. And just the how it opened the world up to me is invaluable. I mean, I owe Farm Bureau a lot in my life of lessons that I learned and doors that they opened. And I mean, I'd never done so much. I just always farmed, was dedicated to farming, never took a vacation, and then, you know, get on Farm Bureau board and you get opened up to this whole new world of advocacy and leadership and education. And that was how I got my start in Farm Bureau. It was just happenstance. My granddad said, talk to my grandson instead of me.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah. You see it everywhere. You know, when someone gets a little bit of the itch, they are pushed into doing it. Like, all right, let's try to try this out. And that's what it's really about, is seeing someone with maybe a little talent for this advocacy thing. Someone that has an opinion, maybe, you know, might need to be shaped or molded in a way, but you see it all over the state, and that's always a cool thing. And then there's just programs set up from the beat that you can kind of put them in, which is helpful too.
You know, one of the things I remember the most, just being a regular board member at Garrett County, not being in leadership, not being vice president, not being president. I remember the day that Mark Haney called me and asked me to serve on a state committee, and it was on the labor committee. It was the first one I served on. I served on the labor committee, the tobacco committee, and the education, political education. And I can just remember how proud I felt of getting that call from the president of Farm Bureau to me to ask me to serve on that local committee. I think about this a lot now in my position, but I think we forget a lot of times what we mean to people and asking them to get involved and do things. And I'll give you an example. One of the interns at the department right now, he was on the state officer team, and he asked a young kid to write a recommendation for him, and he had no idea how important he was to this kid. And the kid's dad was telling me about it, about how much it just meant to him to ask him to write that letter of recommendation for something that he was doing. He was an underclassman younger than him, and just the difference that it made in his life. It probably changed his trajectory in some way just by asking him to write that recommendation. And when Mark Haney asked me to be on that committee, it validated me thinking that, you know, maybe I can do something more.
That's so interesting. We have a lot of committees happening actually this week, and going in, this will come out in August. And so a lot of our advisory committees are meeting in August. Tell me, you talk about getting out of Garrett County and learning, I would say gain perspective. When you talk about working on some of those committees, do you think that perspective, even though it was specific to commodities or to labor issues you were working with every day, do you think it broadened your kind of thought on how those were handled when you start talking to other people?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because even as like-minded as we are in Farm Bureau membership, there are still differences of opinions. And some of the people that the biggest thorns in your side in some of these meetings, and I'm sure that you're thinking of the same people that I'm thinking of, also have a perspective that helps challenge how you think about things. One of my very, very good friends lives here in Louisville, and he used to have a think tank and now is a consultant at a big firm, does national consulting. And what I tell people about him is the reason I love our friendship and relationship so much is because I can't just say things. I can't just say, yeah, I believe X, Y, and Z, or this is the way something is. He's always challenging me to back up what I believe and back up what I think. And I think that's what the committee process does here for Farm Bureau, is it challenges us not just on the status quo of what we think is going to happen, but it challenges us to look at it from gaining the biggest market share and benefit out of each issue that we have. And by the time that it goes from an idea in a local Farm Bureau meeting to a resolution that's sent up to the state board to a resolution that's vetted by committee, then a resolution vetted by the resolutions committee, and then gets onto the statewide stage to be voted on by Farm Bureau, it has gone through such a process of vetting that we get such a good product. And I think that's why, and I jokingly say this whenever I was a state representative, but the three main documents that we live by in Kentucky is the Bible, the Constitution, and the Farm Bureau's policy guidebook, because it's just filled with things that are beneficial to Kentucky. And, on even initiatives that I'm working on currently, I want to make sure that those resolutions make it through your all's process so that I have you as an advocate with me in the legislature, like on economic development issues and others for agriculture.
Well, that's a good tie-in. We're talking Kentucky Ag. You as the Commissioner of Agriculture, you've been traveling for how many months now, really honing in on a lot of things you talked about last year, this time when you were campaigning. So where are we at in Kentucky agriculture? What are some of the highs? What are some of the lows you're seeing as you've really gotten across the state, really gotten into the department?
It's truly remarkable. I knew how good our future was in Kentucky agriculture, but being able to see it firsthand, talk to the people that are making the wheels turn, and really looking at the innovative ways that Kentucky farmers are really dealing with global market changes is really remarkable. And in Kentucky, what we have done so well for decades now is focused on the commodity. How good can we get corn? How good can we get beans? How good can we get wheat? How good can we make the genetics in cattle? How good can we make, our poultry? How good can they gain? How good can we make pork? We focused on the genetics and the chemicals and the practices that we have from the commodity side. But one of the things that we've lacked a little in is on the economic development side of how we deal with those products on the back end. How do we maximize the best way possible the processing and market share for our farmers to be able to sell those amazing, great products that we have built up? And so that's really what we've been focusing on for the last 6 months as we've been in office, and what we were preparing for the 3 years running was how do we really help turn this ship in that direction to where that we're focusing on ag as economic development every single day. I'll give you one of the best examples in Kentucky of how processing makes a difference, how that being that end users is the Hopkinsville elevator. The co-op down there, Commonwealth Agri-Energy, is about a $700 million business. They got about 168 employees. But if they just buy the corn and they put it on a barge or a truck or a train, which they do a lot of, they add about 5 cents of value per bushel of corn. But if they make it into ethanol, dried distillers grain, CO2, and all the other things that they do there at the facility, they add $1 in value to that same bushel of corn. So a 20 times greater value by processing it and having an end user associated with it. And so that's really what we've been focusing on is how do we build up our infrastructure and our market share in Kentucky to get those end users here. And around biofuels and feeding is really on feedlots and biofuels and getting it into chickens and pigs is really where we focus on the grain markets. On large-scale animal processing, we've got a great market in poultry and pork in the state. We've got to do better at our cattle. We've got some amazing small processors that we need to help build up to maybe being medium to large-size processors in the state. But really looking at further processing. How do we get breading? How do we get specialty cuts? How do we do those things on the backside so that we're consuming more and more of those products in the state for an end user in a global market share? And then looking at our produce production in the state of Kentucky, we've really tried to focus on what are the missing links in order for us to be competitive with states that are known for it now. And a lot of that surfaces around on-farm cold storage, distribution, cold storage and centers, and then processing in order to expand out the growing season that we have, taking it from a 3 to 6 month growing season to a 6 to 12 month growing season, so that businesses like restaurants or hospitals or nursing homes that have to have food every single day can rely upon a Kentucky source 12 months out of the year. And if they can't, helping build in those contingencies for out-of-state produce that comes in. So we're working on a couple of initiatives there to try and help build up those scenarios, one of them being our Food is Medicine campaign that we're working on with the Hospital Association to really affect health care from being just sick care to well care. How do we get people healthier on the front end so that we find the health benefits on the back end? And then the last thing that we really try to focus on from an economic development standpoint is on-farm tourism, direct-to-consumer marketing, and how do we get more education on the farm and try to capitalize on that with a purchase point.
Yeah, I think one of the neatest conversations when you talk about how much we've focused, and we can say the last 30 years now, and I always attribute it to the tobacco settlement funds.
Absolutely.
Is I had that conversation that I'd always heard about, and then I actually talked to the guy at the feedlot who said, if you could have seen the cattle 30 years ago and then what you're sending in now, we want Kentucky cattle. We want your grass cattle. We want your backgrounder stalker guys like myself and you that are sending those. And if you'd asked me that in the beginning, early 90s, we did not. You were sending us balling calves. You were sending us sick ones. They weren't. So we've done all these efficiencies on the front end. I think that's been incredible. And I don't by any means want to say tobacco settlement hasn't been used for processing. It surely has. But it's like we have this base now of true quality, whether it's beef cattle, whether it's production, it's across the board. And so we're at this point now. It's an outstanding feat. And now it's time, okay, what's step 2?
Yeah.
So I think it's incredible. And I think it's a compliment to say it's time to do more of the economic development, because that means we have a solid kind of foundation that we feel comfortable to do now. I think it's really neat.
Absolutely.
So you get to travel the country, I guess, in your role, right? And
I try not to as much as possible. That's one thing that my staff at the department keeps getting on me about, is being more involved with some of these national groups and, doing international visits. My thing with that is I love being here. I love the people of this state. I love the groups that we get to interact with. I love my employees. I mean, the people at the Department of Agriculture are amazing people. I mean, there's not a dud in the bunch. I mean, I walk around and it's just, I learn something new about somebody every single day. And it's just because I ask, hey, how's your day going? How's it going out there? What are you working on? How can we make your life easier? Those kind of questions. And I mean, they're just doing some amazing work. They're passionate about their job and they really enjoy it. And I'm really protective right now of the culture that we've built over the last 6 months at the department, which is one of innovation, success, and gratitude. But as far as the international trade side of that and the traveling outside of the state and internationally, I just don't want to waste trips going somewhere where we're not going to see benefit from it in the future. And so what we're trying to do now is lay the foundation to make sure that as we're using taxpayer dollars or we're trying to gain into market share, that we're taking validators with us that maybe we know currently in the marketplace so that we can help expand that. I just don't want to waste. We have such valuable work going on right now that I hate wasting time not being here doing. But yeah, I don't travel as much as I probably should.
No,
I'm a homebody, man.
I think your answer's good. I was really getting to the point of like, what do you see? You talk about Kentucky being unique. We talk about diversity. We talk about all these things.
Yeah.
What does that really? What do you mean? And you're a person that does get out of the state. You've done it even before your role now.
Right.
What is so unique about Kentucky in comparison from an agriculture standpoint? Like, where do you see that you go to other states and you're like, man, we do this really well in Kentucky?
Well, I mean, we have some of the resources here that no other state has, and if they couldn't pay for them if they wanted to. With the Ohio River, the Mississippi River, with our natural resources that we have in coal, water is our biggest asset that we have in Kentucky, and it will continue to be our biggest asset into the future as we try to attract businesses and build up businesses here in Kentucky, is our availability to water, clean water, and our availability to water ports to get to the rest of the world. If Brazil and Argentina had the Mississippi River, it'd be over globally. Thank God they don't have it, and we do, and their infrastructure isn't there. Otherwise, we would be seeing even smaller gains in the market where corn and beans is right now. But for us, the resources that we have, the logistical center point that we are for the world, and then just how diversified we really are. I mean, right now in Kentucky, as many of the listeners will know, you've got some places that have an abundance of water, and you've got some places that don't. And, growing up, and everybody said this, you don't like Kentucky weather, wait 7 days, and it'll change. And we have true 4 seasons in Kentucky. We have a true summer, a true fall, a true winter, and a true spring. And not every state has that. And then outside of that is just our people, our willingness to work, and the understanding that we have and the ability to adapt as a people. Especially that heritage coming out of the Appalachian Mountains of how do we build upon that as a people in Kentucky, and it's been pretty good to us so far. And I think the main thing that we need here in Kentucky is just opportunity. That's something that other states get. We just have to build that in to what we have in Kentucky and be proud of who we are. Demand that we get those opportunities, and I think it's starting to happen. I see it happening every single day. We're now national leaders in economic development. We're national leaders in production of the commodities that we have. People are really starting to pay attention to where Kentucky is.
Yep.
Well, speaking about Kentucky, like I said, we'll be in August, and a couple episodes this month we'll talk about it. But when you talk about showcasing Kentucky and showcasing Kentucky agriculture, I think it would be silly not to mention the Kentucky State Fair. And when we talk about staff, if you set aside the fairground staff, I would say the most staff on site is going to be Department of Agriculture.
No question.
There is a Department of Agriculture employee in every nook and cranny of that fair and truly making it work and happen.
Yep.
whether it's the contest, whether it's the exhibits. Tell us a little bit about what you guys have got planned, how excited you are going into the fair. It's going to be a pretty wild 10 days.
This is my first state fair as ag commissioner. And, growing up, I was a little bit deprived of state fair because 200 acres of tobacco, you wasn't getting away in August. And so I never went to the state fair until I got elected to the legislature, which is probably a little different than most other ag commissioners that we've had in the history of the state. But, for me, I'm really excited about this being my first state fair. And I keep telling the employees, I say, it can't be a bad one. Like, this is my first one. You can't make it bad. And so they all joke with me every day.
Harder right now.
No, they just joke with me like, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Nobody's going to care. But we've got all of our volunteer spots are filled up. Everybody's ready to work. We've got it all laid out. We're going to have a new ag land this year at the Department of Agriculture. My goal in it is that if your child goes through ag land, that they feel like they've been on the farm. And so we're going to have a lot of interactive things there at ag land for them to participate in. When you start through the, kind of obstacle course that we're going to put up, it'll be like you're waking up at 4 a.m., having to milk the cows and go through the whole process of being on the farm. And that was kind of the goal that I challenged them with, is that whenever a child leaves ag land, that they feel like they've had an experience on the farm. And we're working with all the commodity groups to ensure that we've got everything that we need for all the things that we do, from the commodity breakfast to the showcases that we have in the contest all throughout. I'm probably most excited about the Sunshine class that we have in the livestock shows with our special needs kids. We've got a record number of registrants, up to 60 at this point. The last year we had 12. I mean, that's how much we've grown it this year. And it's become a problem. That's what I told them in the beginning. I said, I want it to get so big it's a problem. Well, we got a call the other day. It's a problem. It's a problem. And so, we're cutting off registration now so that we can kind of make sure that it's worthwhile for everybody who's participating, and then see what this big of a class does so that we can expand it next year and have some new things with it, because the more you can pour into someone with special needs, the better off it is. And it's more for us than it is for them at the end of the day. I mean, the way that they make you feel is nothing like nothing else. The other thing that I'm pretty excited about is our giant pumpkin contest.
How we doing? How's the pumpkin look?
I have figured out that I don't know how to grow a giant pumpkin. And last year I got 400 pounds. I was proud of it. Took it to the state fair, got 8th place. And it's the most proud 8th place I ever got, Matt.
Yeah.
Most proud 8th place I ever got. And the winner was 1,200 pounds. Bayou out of Scott out of Adair County won last year. I was pretty proud of, the pumpkin I was growing this year, and I've got several of them. That's one of the things I'm going to change for next year. I've got 9 plants out there.
Oh, my gosh.
And none of them are doing what I need them to do, so I'm going to calm it down a little bit next year. But I thought I was doing really good. It's about 250 pounds right now, my biggest one, and we got another couple of weeks to go. And I called a buddy of mine who grows a giant one every year, and he's like the kingpin of giant pumpkin growing out of Floyd County. And I was talking to him, and he was like, yeah, that's really good. You did a good job. And I said, how big's yours? He said, you don't want to know. My guess is it's getting close to 1,000 pounds right now.
Right now.
Oh, my gosh.
And so he's still got more time to go. So I've got to figure out a few things with that. So if you've got any tips and tricks, Renee.
I'm more of a livestock gal, so I don't know if pumpkins are my job.
Yeah. I do think I figured it out, though. I've experimented and tried a lot of different stuff, but I think the thing that I've got to do is I've got to get more vine before I set my pumpkin.
Okay.
I've got to get more vine out. Most of my pumpkins that are on the vine right now have less than 250 square feet of vine. I need to get 1,500 to 2,000 square feet of vine and then set my pumpkin, and then it'll grow like 50 pounds a day. Some of them are. It's crazy.
That's insane.
So I think that's the mistake that I've been making, is I've just been trying to get that pumpkin set so that I can watch it grow. That instant gratification. I'm just going to have to delay my gratification a little bit longer.
It's the patience.
Yep.
Well, cool. Well, we're looking forward to the State Fair. I know Farm Bureau's all over as well. And
one thing I would like to say also is how much I appreciate Farm Bureau and their involvement with us, from sponsorships for everything. Every time we've ever asked for anything, Farm Bureau's been there for us. And they are the primary sponsor of the Commissioner's Benefit Farm to Fork this year. That's going to be on August 14th at 6 p.m. at the Harold Workman Lobby at the State Fairgrounds. And the benefit is going to be to State CASA, which is court-appointed special advocates. And Farm Bureau is the primary sponsor of that. They've underwritten the event so that all proceeds from ticket sales goes directly to kids in the state of Kentucky who need an advocate in the court systems. And, it's just, I'm really proud and appreciative of Farm Bureau for stepping up in that And there was never hesitation. You all are always there. Every single time we've needed you all, you're there.
Well, I can't thank you enough for sending that over. I personally got to sit in that meeting where it was officially approved, and it was about a 2-second vote to get that done. So that just shows you the importance of the need and the importance of what we can do. And we try to be there when we can. So we have great leadership, and I appreciate that. And we need to give a shout out to you. We laugh and say that whether it's Drew, whether it's Eddie, whether it's any of our leadership crew, somebody has talked to Jonathan in the last day.
Yeah, no
at
doubt.
a minimum. So
somebody's giving me a hard time is what's happening.
For sure.
If they've talked, I tell people that Eddie Melton likes aggravating me more than he does breathing.
No, but we appreciate the collaboration. If it's not them talking to you, it's some of my group in commodities talking to your team. It's Kyle's group talking to y'all's team. I mean, it's just constant. And we've had that with other administrations as well, but it is just something that we can't let go of. It's incredibly important. So we can't thank you enough. We will add the link to that dinner, though, in case there's any tables left or tickets available. We'll put that in the show notes. And then if anyone's interested, be on the lookout for that and see if you can get locked in on that dinner.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. I know we kind of swindled you away, the board meetings upstairs, and I know you're speaking to them here in a minute, and we snagged an hour, but I can't thank you enough. We really appreciate you driving over here and seeing us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
All right, and thank you, listeners. Don't forget to subscribe to our larger podcast, Kentucky Farm Life, and we'll see you next time on Between the Rows.